Today we're going to go through the 7 steps on how to be debt-free. This is based on the Ramsey method. So it's not my method, but it's one that has proven to be successful. So I'll take you through that now. So step 1, save for an emergency fund. So you save $1,000 initially, so that's going to give you a little bit of a buffer if you run into trouble while you start budgeting. And the aim of having that emergency fund is so that you don't go into debt again if you're already in debt. So $1,000 doesn't sound like much, but it's a great place to start, and it covers most minor minor things so that you can get started and not go into debt. So things like wanting to go out for a meal is not an emergency, or somebody's called you up to go out for a meal, that's not an emergency. But if you go and you want a piece of equipment in your home broke down, like your washing machine or your dryer, then that would be cause to use your emergency fund. Step 2 is to pay off all your debt. So this is the biggest step for most people, and it's using, and all debt is all consumer debt. It doesn't include your mortgage, so it will include things like your student loans, HECS debts, credit card loans, buy now, pay later debts, credit card loans, personal loans, anything like that. So we're going to start from the smallest item, so you've got to list them out. It doesn't matter about the percentage rate. The aim is not to consolidate your debts into a lower rate, because it's not actually addressing the issue of you going and getting debt. So, and the aim is to be intense so that you are getting over it in a shortest time possible, and but you're intense, and it leaves a lasting memory on you that you never want to be in that position again. So that's the aim of being intense. Ramsey refers to it as gazelle intense. But yeah, be intense. Sell things in your home to try and cover and make those debt repayments quicker, and you may need to take on additional jobs depending on how much margin you have in your budget. Step 3, once you've got over all those, your consumer debts, so that may take a couple of years, but after that, the aim is to save up for 3 to 6 months of your emergency fund. So the emergency fund will then become a bigger amount of cash that you keep liquid. You calculate all your expenses that you have per month, especially after you've finished all paying off your debt, and then you calculate that by 3. Lowest amount is 3 months, so times it by 3 or 6. If you're a single person, they recommend doing at least 6 months, and depending on what's happening in your life, if you're about to have a baby, so that's the kind of time frames you're sort of aiming for. Where do you put this money? Do I put it in do you lock it up or do you invest it? No, you keep it liquid so that you can get to it at any time. Put it in a high interest savings account, and somewhere where you're not going to look at it all the time. It's there in an emergency so that you don't have to go to a bank or to a loan company to get money when you are in a serious emergency, say you lose your job or something major happens. So keep it accessible and don't invest it. Step 3B, this is an interim sort of one before step 4, obviously, and that is for those who may not have a house and are saving for a house deposit. So once you've paid off all your debt, you direct all that cash that you were putting towards your debt into a house deposit. So ideally, you would want to get to 20% of the asking rate. So if the house was $100,000, just for an example, not many houses are that low in price, but it would be $100,000, then you would be looking to put down $20,000. You want to start with a good amount of equity into your home, because at least in Australia, and I think in the US as well, they call it PMI, but in Australia they call it LMI, Lenders Mortgage Insurance, and that whacks an additional amount onto your home loan. So you don't want to start off with an even higher price, even if it goes over 30 years. It's not a great way to invest your money and your hard-earned cash. So your savings can also be used if you've already got a house and you don't need a deposit. This step can be used to buy a larger cost item, for example a car, but we don't want you spending more than half of your wage on a car. You should keep it down and buy secondhand at least 3 years to 4 years old. Don't go and buy a brand new because you're just wasting your money. Place savings in a high rate savings account, again, like in step 3. So once you've accomplished that, amazing, you're doing very well. The next step is to invest 15% of your income. So remember, your income should be without any debt. You'll have your operating expenses to keep your house and your four walls going. So then the aim is to invest 15% of your pay into retirement. In Australia, we call them superannuation funds. In the US, you have the 401k and Roth IRAs. IRAs, and then look at investing in mutual funds and or index funds, and then max out your contributions for the year as much as you can. In Australia, I think it's around $25,000. In the US, I understand it's a little bit smaller, but then you can do multiple versions of an IRA. And definitely do not borrow against any of your funds. In Australia, you can't really do that. But in America, or United States, I should say, you can borrow against your 401k, which is your retirement. So don't do that. Step 5 of the 7 steps to being debt-free and being wealthy is to save for your child's college fund or university, is what we'd call it here in Australia, and avoid those HECS debts. So ideally, we don't want our children being left with the debt of student loans. And even though it doesn't look like that it affects them immediately, especially here in Australia, their wages will be garnished, meaning they'll get take home less pay because it's going towards, or they'll pay more at the end of tax year. And we've seen recently with the indexation of those HECS debt loans, which are our student loans in Australia, that they went up a massive amount. The government has corrected a bit of that this year, or is planning to, so it will be somewhat similar to what it has been in previous years before our inflation rates were so high. But yeah, so save for your child's college fund. If you only got young kids, this is a great start for them, so they don't have to go into debt. If you don't have any children, maybe you have nieces and nephews that you're close to, that you want to, or maybe you want to sponsor a child as well. In Australia, we have the Smith family. Not that I'm endorsing that, but there are programs around that could help others get into university. If you have no children, yeah, that's what I was saying about nieces and nephews. You can expect the costs for college or uni to be anywhere from around $20,000 to $60,000 per year, but it depends on their course, of course. And look into education-based savings accounts in the US. They have that. They're not as common here in Australia. And definitely get your children to apply for as many scholarships as they can to help them with the costs of going to uni or college. Step 6, once you've done all step 5, you can do steps 4, 5 and 6 together. But you can start to pay off your home and be completely mortgage free, and that means that you own your house and the banks don't anymore. So you can put as much as possible towards it, and you can be intense. Otherwise, you can take a little bit slower with the aim to reduce your principal so that then you can pay it off and you're not paying as much interest over the course of your mortgage loan. And in Australia, typically they give you a 30-year mortgage loan and it's a variable rate. You can only fix for maximum 5 years, whereas in the US, you guys get to fix for 15 years or 30 years, which is amazing. So paying off the mortgage early will make you an amazing position, will leave you in an amazing position. And finally, step 7, if you've got to this point, amazing. How awesome would this be? Now you get to live and give like no one else. So Ramsey's philosophy is to give and give generously. So, and then keep building that wealth for you in your retirement so that you're not scratching for support, and then being able to help others as well. So, and continue to use your skills in not being attracted to debt. Don't go into debt. Even if you think you've got enough time before retirement, just don't do it. You've come so far, and so you've worked so hard. So, congratulations. I can't wait to be into step 7, and hopefully I'll be able to share that one day. Thanks very much. Hope this helps.